Well, this is going to be a lot of fun for me. It's an honor and my great pleasure to introduce the 2018 winner of the American Constitution Society's Progressive Champion Award, Dahlia Lithwick, lawyer, journalist, podcaster, invaluably astute observer of the foibles and follies that now beset us in our courts and in our politics. The letter informing Dahlia of her selection for this award included this sentence, quote, "Your voice has been a clarion call to all of us to stand up for our constitutional order in the face of those who would discard it," unquote. And I emphasize voice because Dahlia possesses one of the most distinctive voices in journalism. Her penetrating analyses are delivered with wit, passion, and deep knowledge of her subjects. Test yourself by trying to imagine getting through a Supreme Court term without her. And if you need proof of just how smart Dahlia really is, consider this. Born in Ottawa, she has never given up her Canadian citizenship. Her bio is in your program, and I won't belabor it, but I'll just say she's a graduate of Yale College, Stanford Law School. After Stanford, she clerked on the Ninth Circuit. She practiced law briefly before beginning her career at Slate nearly 20 years ago. I remember well when she first showed up in the Supreme Court press room, who was this smart, funny person who seemed to have materialized from nowhere? We soon found out. It's impossible to convey the power of Dahlia Lithwick's work without the power of her actual words, so I will end these brief remarks by quoting from a couple of her recent pieces. Last December 13th, she published her account of the unnerving encounter she had had with Judge Alex Kaczynski while clerking for another judge on his court. Judge Kaczynski, she wrote, occupied a, quote, strangely hypersexualized world of transgressive talk and action. His acts of darting forth into deep sexual taboo became a natural experiment in who would live there with him. 5 days later, Judge Kaczynski resigned from the bench. And Dahlia stood up, as few others did, against the mindless drive to push Senator Al Franken out of public office. Senator Franken, a friend of the ACS, as some of you remember. And here's what she wrote, quote, "It's wrong because we no longer inhabit a closed ethical system in which morality and norm preservation are their own rewards. We live in a broken and corroded system in which unilateral disarmament is going to destroy the very things we want to preserve." And finally, here was her pithy appraisal just the other day of Masterpiece Cake Shop. Quote, "Constitutionalizing major civil rights disputes based largely on who spoke more rudely to whom feels an awful lot like pandering to the suffering Olympics discourse that serves only to convey that whoever feels the most dignitary injury will ultimately prevail." She went on, "Rooting a decision in whose words were most hurty to Kennedy's ears adds nothing but confusion." So that's Dahlia, words of insight, words of common sense, progressive champion. Please come and receive your award.
So I have to start by saying that, like the people in the back of the room, when I first met Linda Greenhouse, I was all, oh my God, that's Linda Greenhouse. And I still feel that way all these years later. She, when I first did kind of weirdly materialize in the press corps, she was a hero and a mentor, and she has become a confidant and a friend. And I am so, so grateful for the trail she blazed and made it a lot easier for me to storm through. So I've been coming to ACS since I was a little baby reporter. I really did used to sit way back there. And it's a lot easier in some ways than being way up here. But I look around this room and I'm just gobsmacked because I see all the people that I text at 3 in the morning. I text you, and it's really been my life raft, folks in this organization, and I'm so honored to share this award today with the other folks who are being recognized and awarded. So I've been writing and thinking about the law and the Constitution and the courts for like Linda says, 20 years, and the beat has changed so profoundly in the last year and a half. Now we pretty much were like flycatchers. We just run around chasing tweets and stray statements and little bits of speeches and things on television, and then we try to build doctrine around it. And it really is so strange to go from somebody whose job for most of my career was to sit and think and reflect on doctrine, to become someone whose job is to catch fireflies and mash them into doctrine and then argue about it on MSNBC. It's just not what I signed up for, and I swear to you, if you had told me that my job was to just go on television and say norms, 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 as though I was in Cheers, it's insane that is the totality of what I have to say anymore. And I want to be really clear that as frustrating as it is for me as a journalist to inhabit this world, I know how frustrating it is for our readers who are just watching us build entire conjectural theories based on something that was said, ephemeral, and disappeared. And that the musings and the threats and that the jokes or not jokes become the totality of what we're trying to press into meaning. And I think what I want to suggest is that more and more as we construct a way of thinking about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution around the claims of just one person and around the claims of the people who then bolster his claims, it feels as though suddenly we're in a world where we're not talking about any Bill of Rights that I recognize. We're talking about, is it possible for one person to decide on their own who is a criminal, what is a crime, who will decide who will get pardoned, who will decide which countries are now our enemies, if the nefarious Canadians are in fact coming for us. This is not the way I thought about executive power, and for the entire constitutionalization of those whims and feints and filaments of arguments to become the way we now think about immigrants at the border, refugees, young women who come here seeking asylum and want only the abortion to which they're entitled. And these whims now have become, in a way, the constitutionalization of narcissism, the constitutionalization of one person's view of the world. And we are becoming, I think, in the press, complicit in every single day, going onto the television, in our columns, and having conversations as though those shifts, the ways doctrines are shifting and morphing, are a normal conversation about how the Constitution works. And so what I would like to do, just in my little bit of time, is to ask you to remember that the thing I love best about ACS, the thing I love best about the Bill of Rights I learned about and I aspire to be a part of, is that really, truly our Constitution is the beating heart of a democracy that is not the Constitution you hear about on television. It is not the Constitution that you read about when debates are happening about whether the president can pardon himself. The Constitution really is, and it's so beautiful to look around the room and see the tumbling, beating, amazing panoply of humanity that are in this country, that want to be in this country, that are in this conversation, all of whom are reflecting and working and helping to compromise our way towards something that really is capacious. It is not the imagination of one mind. And so I'm here telling you that I cannot, as a journalist, completely believe that the American dream is one person's nightmare. And to be in this room and see that lived and experienced is so powerful. So I just want to say that to all the people in this room who work to make that America, that Bill of Rights, that big-hearted view of who is important and who matters, who work to make that reality, I just thank you so much, because you make my job really worth doing. And I really want to honor the Constitution that you all are a part of. Booker T. Washington famously said, there are two ways to exert strength. One is to push down, the other is to pull up. And I'm in a room full of people who really are now more than ever modeling what the power of pulling up looks like. So I just want to close by asking you to do something a little random with me. 21 years ago, one of my favorite social justice warriors, Mr. Rogers, accepted a Lifetime Emmy. He could not have been more moved and honored than I am today to accept this award. And as some of you may remember, he used his little bit of time in his speech to ask everyone in the room, these gorgeous Hollywood starlets and stars, to just sit quietly for 10 seconds and think about someone who loved them. And it went over exactly the way it would go over when you ask Hollywood gorgeous people to be silent for 10 seconds. It was awkward, but it was also, I think, just so fundamentally a way of honoring people who are not in the room. And so I want to close by saying I think there's no better tribute that I could ask for to the work that ACS has done day in and day out, to the people in this room who, whether they do it through lobbying or advocacy or work in government or litigation or being a judge, make visible the people who are not reality TV show people, the immigrants seeking asylum, transgender teens, women who need health care, children who need food assistance, people of color all around this country, kneeling athletes, to all of you and the work you do to make real people visible and to cut through the endless noise that is our discourse now. I'm going to ask you to take 10 seconds and hold those people up in your thoughts and think about really why we're in the room. It's not to fight about whether the president can pardon himself. The work we have to do over this conference is to hold those people up and remember that the Constitution is for them. So like Fred Rogers said, take 10 seconds. I'm going to count. And let's spend our time together making that Constitution that sees those people real. I want to thank ACS. I want to thank Mark Stern and Josh Levine, who are here representing my Slate family. I want to thank my son Kobe, who's representing my real family. And I want to thank all of you, really, for this tremendous and breathtaking honor. Thank you.